Hey, welcome back to the channel, and if it's your first time, welcome. Today we're looking at r/ProRevenge, so let's get into it. Cheat on your wife with mine? I will burn your life to the ground. Way back in the early 2000s, I began to suspect that my wife was up to something. Our two kids were about 4 and 6. Still young, but not so young they couldn't tell you something about what happened in their day. They started talking a lot about staying with my wife's parents during the day, which wasn't really that strange in and of itself. But since they lived about 90 minutes away, doing so 2 or 3 times a week seemed a bit much. That was basically every day she wasn't working at her part-time job. When I asked her about it, she denied it, but was never a good liar. So I started tracking the mileage on her car, and sure enough, she was driving an extra 400 or so miles per week. I knew some shit was going on. Then one day I sat down at the computer, and she'd left a sticky note with her AOL password written on it next to the keyboard. I could not resist and logged in to read her emails, and saw a few email exchanges between her and her college BFF, where they discussed how my wife was regularly effing one of her ex-boyfriends from high school. No mention of details about him other than my wife also talking shit about his wife and making fun of how she'd gotten fat after having kids. Anyway, I printed out these email exchanges and stashed them. I still needed to know the details. So I called a friend who was a cop, and he suggested I call a guy who he knew that had left the force to become a private investigator. Ron was great. I paid his retainer and gave him the emails and what little I knew about my wife's activities, and he figured out exactly what she was doing. His report detailed with photos and times, dates, locations, all about how she would take the kids to her parents, then go meet this guy for lunch, then they'd go to a dumpy motel for a few hours, after which she'd pick up the kids and return home. At this point, I hired a divorce lawyer. My parents cheated on each other, and the fallout absolutely destroyed mine and my siblings' childhood. It was something that was totally unacceptable. I also asked Ron to find out what he could about this guy. Ron absolutely came through. I learned his name was Bob, that he was married and had 3 kids. I also found out that he worked as a VP sales for his father-in-law's business. At this point, I had my lawyer draw up the divorce papers. I also asked Ron for a couple more copies of his report. And one more thing I wanted him to do for me. On the same day, I had my wife served with the divorce papers at her work. I had Ron meet with the guy's wife and show her everything he'd found out. She seemed nice, and I figured that she deserved to know what her dear hubby was up to. What she did with that information was up to her. While the information about my wife's infidelity didn't really matter in my divorce proceedings, Bob's wife did a real number on him. According to the publicly available court documents from the divorce and other related proceedings, she cleaned out their joint account, took the kids, and left. As soon as her dad found out what he'd done, Bob was fired, and since her parents actually owned the house where Bob and his wife lived, he also got evicted. Their divorce was ugly, lots of fighting in and eventually out of court. I guess Bob went to the house and started arguing with his wife, and it escalated to the point where her brother stepped in and Bob got his nose broken. There were restraining orders, a few more incidents with police reports, criminal charges, jail time, and so on. I can't find Bob on the internet anywhere these days. Last I heard, he'd left the state and his ex-wife did okay. She went to work at her dad's company and took over after he retired. As for me, my ex and I got along well enough. I didn't engage with her or anything that wasn't related to the kids, and now that they're both adults, I don't talk to her at all anymore. I don't hate her or anything, but I only care in the context that she's my kid's mom and it's important to them. Nothing beyond that. That guy sucks. I am so glad OP did what he did. I also don't understand why he wouldn't just divorce her sooner and string along the marriage. He totally disrespected his wife and left receipts. I don't know how he thought this would have ended. Or at least didn't expect it not to catch up to him. But hey, good on you, OP, and I'm glad you're doing better. Tricking my slacker coworker into sabotaging himself. I work in an office with a guy I'll call Seth. Seth is that coworker everyone knows. Lazy, always passing his work on to someone else, and somehow always getting away with it. He'll sit around on his phone or go to the bathroom every 10 minutes. He's the kind of guy who will show up late, make some lame excuse about traffic, and then disappear for lunch for 2 hours. For the past 6 months, Seth's favorite target has been me. He'll send emails asking if I can help out with a project. But what he really means is, do all the work while I take all the credit. I complained to my boss a couple of times, but somehow Seth always manages to weasel his way out of trouble. The final straw came when he passed off a major report that was due to a client in 2 days, dumping it on me last minute. One day, I casually asked him if he was good with Excel, and he admitted he didn't know much about it. Perfect. The next time Seth tried to dump a bunch of spreadsheets on me to organize his next report, I agreed. But this time, I embedded a series of hidden formulas into the document. These formulas didn't do anything important, just enough to mess with the numbers if someone didn't know how to check for hidden cells. It took me a little time, but I was careful not to make it too obvious. The kicker? Every time Seth tried to copy and paste the data into his report, it would scramble everything just enough to make it completely useless. On the day the report was due, Seth slacked off like usual, assuming I'd handled it like always. When the client called, they were furious because the report was filled with nonsense numbers. Seth panicked, he rushed to fix it, but every time he tried to fix one part of the report, something else would break. He came to me, frantic, and asked for help. I acted confused and said, "Oh, I don't know what happened. Maybe it's a glitch." I gave him some vague advice and watched as he spent the entire day trying to salvage his mess. Our boss found out, and for once, Seth couldn't talk his way out of it. He got lambasted for screwing up such an important project and was put on a temporary leave without pay. I guess he'll be doing his own work from now on. I'm kinda surprised this didn't get traced back to OP, but again with Seth trying to take all the credit, he definitely got what he deserved and it's very satisfying to read. I'm just finally glad it caught up to him. It's just a shame it wasn't enough to get him fired. And before we get to the last story, if you guys could hit the like and subscribe button, it would help the channel grow a lot as it's a newer channel. Thanks. Phone calls for the previous owner who turned out to be my shitty manager. Mobile phones became common in my country around 2004, just as I finished high school. My parents bought me my first phone, a second-hand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised myself that someday I'd buy a new phone with my own money. When college started, I had a 2-hour daily commute. In high school, I had excelled academically and won several district-level awards. These awards were being distributed during my first year of college. One nationalized bank award finally gave me enough money for a new phone. I bought a Sony Ericsson K300i and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the third day, I started receiving calls for a guy named Bitsa from various financial institutes. It turned out the number previously belonged to him, and for 20 years, I've been getting these calls. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device-specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over, keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009, around 2010. I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. He took pride in making our lives a living hell. Bits ruled with an iron fist. The moment his team stepped in the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. Bits' presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet was quick to take credit for any successes, no matter how small. Failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours. ensuring no one could escape his grasp. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thinly veiled threat: perfection or dismissal. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. Yet Bits remained oblivious, satisfied only by his complete and total control. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area as I and had gone to the same school, though years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise. But infrastructure-wise, we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That was when I first learned about Bits from an organization hierarchy perspective. His full name was an eye-opener. It was Bitsa. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else. I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into details, but it was evident that Bitsa and Bits were the same person. I had been quite pissed with this unknown person named Bitsa for almost a decade by then. And Bits had been the bane of mine and several others' existences for quite some time. This is where the revenge lies. First, I unblock all the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls daily on average. But after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying, "wrong number," I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and provided his current number to update their database. This is where I could be the asshole. I also volunteered his manager's number in case he tries something else. The fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Banks sold his debts to companies that harassed people for a living to get their money back. It turned out he'd been taking loans in everyone's names. His wife, parents, uncles, aunts, and giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of up to $200K, equivalent in USD, but it's a shitload of money where we're from. Apparently, he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him. Probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened in the office when his managers started to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later. Haven't heard from him since. You know, I really don't think OP was the asshole. If anything, he just dealt with an Avengers level threat. This guy sounds atrocious. On top of dealing with all of the debt collectors, he also helped them find the guy. And now everyone else in the office doesn't have to deal with him either. So in my opinion, no, I think he did great. Hey, thanks for staying to the end of my video. I hope you liked it. Please let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you want me to do any other subreddits, let me know there as well. And I'll see you all next time.